Heiner, are you there? Heiner. Heiner. Can you try speaking, Heiner, so I can see if I can hear you? Heiner? You appear frozen. Are you in a low bandwidth area? Heiner? Heiner, can you try speaking? Heiner? Heiner, can you unmute, please? Heiner, can you try speaking? Heiner? Okay, Heiner, can you say something? Can you say something? Can you say something, Heiner? Hey, Stacy.
Hey, I will be right there. I just walked in.
Okay, so you did not have to have me unmute you you could actually just speak directly. Heiner's having trouble.
Correct. Correct.
Heiner, can you say something?
Well, Heiner's mute icon is on both devices.
Yes. And I've asked him to unmute, and that doesn't seem to be doing
And
anything.
he's also okay. He's also frozen on both of them.
Yeah, so I think he's in a park that may have low bandwidth.
Okay, let me just get my dog settled and I'll be right there.
Okay.
Can you hear the
But
music?
you can hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear you now, Heiner. Yes. What did you do differently?
Okay. Then I now solve the second problem with the bandwidth. One thing after the other.
Okay, good. All right. So, are you in a park right now, or a beer garden?
No, I'm in my favorite Saturday, Sunday afternoon restaurant, and I'm getting the things, and I will put the camera off because eating and video or photo is not really fitting very well. But I can listen to you and I can enjoy.
So, Heiner, I know that mostly you've been listening the last couple of weeks. Last week and possibly the earlier week, we went over kind of a proposed minimal structure for these Sunday sessions. Do you recall, and do you have any feedback?
No, I don't recall. No feedback.
Okay. Okay, so let me just briefly say that we may have someone, a new friend, who's actually been on GCC calls maybe about a year or two ago. Stacia Scoggins did say that she listened to two or three of our Sunday sessions, and she thought that they were interesting or more interesting than Saturdays. And so she may join us today. So if she does, I will take the opportunity to kind of review the minimal structures again. Or, Heiner, if you would like, I can do that for you as well. No need?
Take it easy. Assemble a group. It must be boring to always repeat yourself.
Well, it's not a waste of time to review things which I think could be foundational. But yes, I do want to avoid being boring and repetitious. So, what's on your mind these days, Heiner?
Well, I'm struggling with a lot of deadlines, and I have early next week, I mean in 10 days, a serious eye operation,
Oh,
which
Wait,
will keep me really in deep shit for 2 or 3 weeks.
wait, what operation?
Eye operation.
Eye operation. I had one about 5 years ago. What is it going to fix?
Well, it is like the connection in the inner eye is losing, and that is a danger to getting blind. And so it's 3 days in hospital, very serious uh, full amnesia operation, and they change the gas in the eye, and it will keep me busy or out of business for 2 or 3 weeks at least.
Hmm.
and when are you going for that?
In about
When?
10 days, it
What?
sounds like.
In 10 days you're doing that?
Tuesday on the 21st.
Wow, all right. Good luck.
9 days. How did they find that? Did you just have some anomaly in the eye and then you said, hey, I better go see the doctor?
No, I tried to get new glasses, and the optician or optical or whatever people were not ready to give me new glasses and said I should see the specialist. And the specialist was referring me to the hospital, and I delayed a little bit, even when it's dangerous, because I didn't want it to go to hospital in the high peak of Corona. So I know it's about 4 or 5 months, or even 6 months, and it is a retina deconnection.
Detachment.
Yes,
Hmm. If it's
and
actually,
they glue it together somehow. I don't know.
yeah, if it's a detachment that they're afraid of, then that's exactly what I had done about 4 or 5 years ago. Except I didn't
Mm.
have to stay in the hospital for 3 days.
Well, it's a full narcosis.
There might be other complications because of his age.
She
No,
said that
no.
to
I
me,
think
Alex. She said
if it's really that thing,
I'm just
then
being,
they have to really take you apart, and it's full narcosis, and it's minimum 2 nights in the hospital.
that. I'm looking up necrosis. Relieve pain.
So there is a gliosis, and they don't know how it happens, but it happens, and uh, they say they want to stitch it together, and then at the same time they do something like the gray star or whatever. It's just a quick fix of the eye.
Hmm. Okay.
But I didn't want to talk about this. I want to eat now,
Okay.
so I will put the camera off. Otherwise, you will be mad at me, and it's giving very bad pictures.
Not for eating. I don't get mad at anybody for eating. Anyway, hi Stace. How are you?
I'm well. It's funny. I'll sit across the table from somebody and eat, but I don't want to eat on camera. I always think about like, what's the difference, except that it's recorded forever.
Well, I have a bowl of granola myself. So if I eat, there'll probably be, stuff between my teeth. That would be the thing. Okay. So anyway, as you're aware, Barry's not going to attend today.
Right.
And there is a possibility another friend of mine, Statius Goggins, who's
I
been,
heard that.
yeah. Oh, okay. So you're here. Okay, good. Anyway, so she may or may not. Let's see. I have again prepared well, always a series of topics just in case we want to
Okay.
jump to a topic. And the one that I wanted to put on the table is a slight variation of something that I've been thinking about for quite a long time. There's this issue of accountability. And the reason I care about accountability, probably obviously to you, is because there's so much corruption evident in government and other organizations. And while it's sometimes simplistic to say, well, if we just have absolute transparency, then we could see everything that's happening and we could see corruption happening and be able to hopefully derail it. And while I still believe that, and it's interesting that you shake your head, so I'd like to understand why you say that. Let me park that thought for a moment and say, hey, Stacia, why do you think that's not workable or not?
No, not that it's not workable. It's not the complete fix, because
It's not a complete fix.
as came on a post that Barry and I were talking about, just because you can see what's there, there's different ways to connect those dots. So that's all I meant.
No, I agree. I agree. I agree. It's not the only part of the solution, but I think it could definitely be
Yes,
part
it's
of the
important.
solution.
It's an important piece. I agree. It's an important piece of the solution.
Right. And yet at the same time, I don't see it ever being put in practice because I think people will always have a problem with absolute transparency. So,
And to just make it clear, the people that have the authority to make those changes would
mhm.
be making them about themselves first.
Yes, yes,
It's not likely to happen without a lot of pressure from other people who don't even realize that it's a necessity in the first place, which
right,
is why I'm always talking about educating the people that don't even know.
right. So I agree with that. So in order to minimize this abhorrence of absolute transparency, I was toying with this idea of eventual transparency. In other
Right.
words, think of it as that each of us possibly have a set of video cameras and an audio recorder on 24/7, right? But it's being locked away in a highly encrypted personal repository where nobody can get at it unless you
Unless,
authorize it, right?
I love that.
Unless there's a need or a demand or some real reason to make it transparent, in which case it would be available, right? And so I think that something like that, which I'm calling eventual transparency, might be a way to take another step towards accountability and hopefully combat corruption. So this is an eventual transparency idea I wanted to float out there.
Okay. So number one, I love that idea. I've been thinking about something very similar along those lines. Um, I also think that with it, you would need to put in a period of amnesty, meaning that to get agreement to go ahead with that program, there has to be a period where people can clear the records and start from here, because we're not a forgiving society at all. Let me let you finish what you're doing.
So tell me what this amnesty is supposed to protect.
The amnesty is supposed to give everybody a fresh start.
Okay, kind of like bankruptcy.
Yes, yes. And bring everybody on board and sort of like say, all right, you know what? None of us
In
are
the past,
perfect.
we start here, in other words.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I'm
Exactly.
okay with that. I'm okay with that. Yeah. So I do like the eventual idea, and that way I can still operate with as private a life as I want, right? And
Mm-hmm.
only when there is a need or demand for accountability and transparency could we then put in place the mechanism that says, okay, let's unlock these 5 minutes or these 20 days or whatever.
I want to point out that actually serves the same function as having a God served, because it's this notion that you will be held accountable.
Yes, yes, yes. The only thing I still have misgivings about is that if we say, okay, I want these 5 minutes, it's still not a complete picture. It's just that select 5 minutes, and that may not be the total sum of the bits of evidence needed to decide any particular matter.
I wasn't thinking about it in such big terms as you are. So I was thinking of it in terms of the videos that we produce, not just in GCC, but in other places. And I was thinking, as far as having a library that's accessible to everybody, but they almost have to check it out. So you know that they are coming to get it, so that you have the opportunity to interact with them.
Hmm.
But it was with the same idea, with knowing that whatever you say that's been recorded on these calls is accessible to everybody, but at the same time, you're aware, so that you have that ability. It's sort of like being able to face your accuser.
Yeah, so it cannot be abused, in other words. Somebody cannot extract something out of context and then use it, against the actual
Right.
intent of that event or
And you also have that, it's like that direct interaction, like, where your information is going.
right.
And it's not going to an anonymous source.
Here's an interesting thing. Maybe we could also say, okay, you've got access to this for 2 days. And after 2 days, it's, the door slams shut again. If we really
And what
want
would
to
be the
protect,
purpose for that?
well, I don't like it myself, but I'm trying to figure out ways that other people who are really truly concerned about privacy could get more comfortable with the idea that it's just not out there forever. It's just here to, determine this one particular issue. And once that issue is resolved, then I retract my
Right, but they could always go back
permission.
and get it again. They could always just
They can
check it
always come
out
back and
again.
say, yes, I forgot to get blah, blah, blah. I would like access again. Right.
Yes, I'm
I
good with
agree.
that.
I agree. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. If someone says, no, I don't want to give you access to that.
that has to go on record.
Yes, yes. Like much of what we're seeing this past week. I only see excerpts. I actually didn't watch
I
the
haven't
entire
I
thing.
haven't watched it at all because there's really no need for me to.
That's interesting also. I actually see the excerpts, that are summarized by these late night talk show hosts. And
I have watched a couple of things on YouTube, but I followed very closely when it was happening.
yes,
That was before I cut out TV from my consumption.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But evidently, there's still new stuff coming out that we didn't see when it was happening. Like,
But
Ivanka saying, yeah, she believes Bill Barr, that sort of thing.
but again, that goes into the pile of, so do I need to know this? Why do I, me personally, need to know that? It's not going to affect anything that I'm going to do that's going to affect anybody else.
Is
It's
that
just
true?
going to
Is that
say
true?
it again.
Is that true?
I can't think of any possible scenario where knowing what Ivanka thinks about it more than I already knew, because I already knew how she had urged her father to call the guard. So I can't think of anything. If you can, I'll entertain it, but I have a pretty good imagination and I can't come up with any scenario as to how that would change any action I might take.
Yeah, you had an interesting proviso there that made me completely comfortable with what you were saying. Any more
Which
than what
was,
you already know. That was important.
yes,
Okay.
that's important. Oh,
Yeah,
that's absolutely important.
right.
And you know me very well. I think a lot. It's not like I don't think and I just make a decision. I have been criticized for overthinking. I think all the time.
hmm So that's good. That was just one topic I wanted to float, and
Next.
I like what your reaction was to that. Okay.
Okay.
I have a little pile of things. Oh, sorry. I have a note to myself every time I start. I should start the live transcript. And I just saw that note and I realized I hadn't started the live transcript. So let me see if I can do that.
You know what I'm finding with the live transcript?
Yeah.
Because I've asked for it a couple of times in different places and it's very difficult for me to use. It's much easier for me to get the transcript from YouTube. The YouTube transcript is much more readable and easier for me to skim. The live transcript is like reading the text transcript. It's not comfortable. It's not usable for me.
Are you able to ignore it?
I don't use it. I mean, I do the best I can, but it's not, again, I'm trying to find things for me personally that motivate me to do more work, whatever work may be. And
hmm
those aren't doing it for me.
But you find the YouTube transcripts while you're watching the video or the YouTube transcripts that I put into the Google Doc?
Those, the ones after the fact,
Yeah. Yeah.
the ones after the fact are much more readable and they all, so I'm very conscious of my mood when I'm doing work.
hmm
And I'm much more relaxed when I'm reading because of visually, the way the YouTube transcript is, visually, it makes me feel better.
Hmm. Have you run across some which show the speaker identification? Because on a very small number of them, like 1 or 2% of them, I've tried to do some speaker identification. So I'll
I'm
try to
not,
say,
yeah, I'm not really even talking about the ones that you post. Sometimes I go on YouTube and I'm just looking at a random YouTube and I just press download transcript.
mm-hmm,
So I don't,
yep,
I can tell you that I've looked at otter transcripts where it's been me speaking, but it wasn't me. And I kind of got upset. I was like, I didn't say that.
yep.
That's not my voice.
I actually find otter transcripts remarkably poor. in their transcription, you know, uh, in both their ability to understand the word as well as the ability to understand who the speaker was, you know, and it takes enough time to correct it that I find it's not itself a real advantage to go there and try and use it. I think it's on the right path. It needs to improve. It'll eventually improve, but in its current state, I don't find it compelling. So that was just a small note while I was headed towards some other topics. Okay. Okay, so here's the other one. You, I think, rightfully so, have identified this whole issue of how do we make global impact without making personal impact, right? I like that theme myself. So I've often called it personal presentation. In other words, how do you present yourself to a potential collaboration or even just a dialogue or even just a simple event or meeting or a conference or whatever. So I do think this notion of presenting oneself, consciously knowing, okay, I'm going to get in the right, you know, relaxed state. Am I going to have done my homework? Am I going to have, you know, connected with various people in order to figure out, you know, what they're interested in? Have I cleared off enough time after the event to really post process? Have I brought the notes that I want? You know, so I think there's a notion of presenting oneself for an event that is the stuff I can do that might make an engagement more pleasant, more calm, more productive, whatever you want to measure it with. So that was one that I really want to lean into as well, because I think when you have brought this up and when I have brought this up, other than you and I think acknowledging it, I don't know that there's a lot of other acknowledgement there. Barry, perhaps, to some extent. But I think too much of collaboration, people think about, oh, all the stuff that needs to happen between us, the rules, you know, the tools, the agendas, you know, all that sort of stuff, which is also important. But if you only focus on that, then at least half of it, which is this personal stuff, isn't accounted for. And then people wonder why meetings don't go the way they thought they would, right? So I was wondering if that might be an interesting thing you'd like to lean into, because there's a lot I think we can explore on that domain.
Well, it's interesting because I actually come into that topic in a different place and moving in a different direction, because I actually think that too many people are focused on how they appear. And what I'm really interested in is what's underneath the mask. So yeah, you could put, I think there are a lot of people that do a really good job at presenting themselves well. Half of the sociopaths running the country or running big corporations are very good at putting on this wonderful presentation, and inside they're not so great. So what I'm really saying when I bring it up is that we have to get to know ourselves better and like ourselves better. So it's a little bit different than what you're talking about. But I did want to make a clarification of something that I brought up yesterday. So it kind of fits into this. When I was talking about not lying to ourselves or bringing things into awareness, I'm not talking about being better or worse. I'm just talking about being in alignment, being true to what we feel. So, you know, if I don't want to do something, even though it sounds selfish, I should just be honest with myself that I don't want to do it. Whether it's selfish or not selfish, I should be honest with myself. That's the kind of honesty that I was talking about, not judging if it's good or bad. And the same goes for doing something good. You know, sometimes people want to say, I'm such a good person because I do this. Well, but you're doing it because it makes you feel good. So yeah, so that's the kind of honesty I was talking about. So I didn't mean to say be something different or change who you are. I just meant that you should be in alignment, you know, so if you're a duck, be a duck.
Yeah, you know, this notion of presentation, I think in my mind, includes the knowing yourself
It
aspect that you're
does.
focused on. Okay.
It
So,
absolutely does.
because
But
you got to know yourself. You got to know your tendencies, your strengths, your weaknesses, your behaviors in order to say, okay, do I really understand how to make this engagement go well? I'm not talking about just do I present myself, uh,
right.
in two dimensions well. That's not the presentation I'm talking about. I'm talking about, am I in a frame of mind that is curious about what you are saying and really trying to co-create something and really trying to make that valuable time for both of us, as opposed to, it's just a way to spend another couple hours on a Sunday or a Saturday. It's a nice social time. Have a good day. That's not why I come to these things, by the way.
Right. But the other piece of that is when we stretch ourselves away from who we really are because we're in a professional setting and we're not really being honest about ourselves about why we're doing it, and we start building up resentments. So at some point, it starts to spill out into areas when we don't expect it.
Can you give me an example?
I'm so not good at coming up with examples. Like, I'm just not good at it because
But something was in your mind when you said that, though, right?
I know, but I cleared out so many of these things so many years ago that I don't remember like personal examples.
I mean, what about examples in others? And leave them unnamed if you like.
It's just if you think of a time when you're trying to be nice and you're trying to be patient with somebody and you're listening and you're listening and you might have listened like for hours and then something else will happen. You'll just like snap it. You'll snap at whoever and you don't even realize it's because you've been so drained from listening to the other person.
Yep,
That kind of thing.
I resemble that remark. Yes.
Or if you resent having worked so hard, even though nobody asked you to do it, and then you resent that somebody else didn't work equally as hard, that kind of thing.
The first example I think is better than the second example. The second one I get. But the first one I think, there's some amount of giving in that listening that really is what I want to do, but it may have gone beyond tolerable
Right.
limits after a while, right? That's the thing that's difficult to determine in real time, perhaps.
Right.
Like, has it been going for 3 hours? Couldn't we have done this in 45 minutes or two or 10? That sort of
Right.
thing.
Right.
Yeah, I do resemble that remark. Yes, good. Yeah, so my idea of presentation includes the self-knowledge and not lying to yourself side of things that you also identified. Interesting. If there's agreement, then we can just move quickly through things and not get bogged down.
Isn't it amazing?
I just want to touch on these things and just check, to see the perspectives that are also in the room and to sort of get some different perspectives on it. Um, what do you think about the notion of ethics as was discussed the last couple of sessions, especially yesterday?
You have to say more. You have to put more in that question.
Okay, so the reason I'm focusing on this is because, to my surprise, a good friend of mine, one whom I consider quite accomplished and quite brilliant and etc., quite educated, seemed stunned that I posted a meme. And I think the meme was essentially saying, if you need God in order to behave like a good person, or to have good morals, or to have good ethics, then you're not a good person. So this person seemed to believe that without God, there would be no guidance on how to be good. I think that idea is quite mistaken. So that's why I believe, as I believe Barry does, that if you look at things systemically, evolutionarily, behaviorally, socially, that we can look at the systems of behavior and determine what kinds of behavior create good outcomes for that ecosystem and what kind of behaviors create bad outcomes for that ecosystem. And from that, we can derive a set of ethics, a set of recommended behavior, recommended values. So that's where I bring up this notion of ethics, morality, and religion.
So for me, this connects to what we've been talking about. It connects to, first of all, knowing yourself and being in alignment with what you really think. And also the idea of what would you do if you didn't think anybody was watching? And if you wouldn't do the same thing, if somebody were watching and if nobody were watching, then you know you're out of alignment. That's the simple test.
Okay. Let me ask it a different way. So a person believes in God. A person goes into a back alley. A person finds a wallet on the ground. A person picks up the wallet, extracts money, and dumps the wallet back on the ground, and goes along their merry way. And this person believes in God. Is this a moral behavior?
Can't answer that based on that information.
Really?
Really?
All right. All right.
I mean, you have to understand, I'm being like really open. I don't connect that to God.
But God is connected to morality, though, right? For religious people.
For religious people, God is connected to morality.
Yes. So I'm
But
saying for a religious person.
But everybody interprets stories differently. So that person might say, oh God, thank you. My family was starving. You dropped this here for me.
If that's the case, then couldn't someone also say, thank you, God, for dropping off this AR-15 so I can shoot whomever I want? Thank you, God.
I hate having these kind of conversations because I don't think they're useful. I think,
Really?
yeah, I don't think they're useful. I think, I don't even know if the word God is important for the conversation. I think the more relevant way to put it is, does there need to be an outside force for somebody to moderate somebody's behavior?
Okay.
Or what is that force that moderates somebody's behavior?
Okay. So going back to one of your themes, when I first introduced this session really super early, instead of God, in the dark alley, there are plenty of cameras. Just recording everything. Cameras and microphones. Or in the second case, same thing with someone picking up an AR-15. Okay. Now, is there a true sense of morality at play? Or is it just fear of being held accountable? Or is that the same thing?
Yeah, I think that's the same thing.
Okay, so morality is just fear of being held accountable for bad deeds.
I have to look up the actual definition of morality.
We can do that right now, I guess. Okay, first definition. The quality of being in accord with standards of right or good conduct. 2. A system or collection of ideas of right and wrong conduct. 3. Virtuous conduct.
Okay.
That's the first set of definitions that come up.
So all of those definitions have subjective terms in them. So yeah, so what I consider good or moral is what I consider good or moral. So for me, I don't need cameras. Well, yes, I guess I do. But my accountability is different than cameras or some God figure in the sky. My accountability is the way I believe material life manifests. Like I live in a system of energy. That's what holds me accountable. So in a way, it is a system of accountability that colors how I judge things.
So in this way, wouldn't everyone be moral? Because everyone's engaging the world in their own notion of what's good and bad.
No, no, I don't think everybody would be moral at all. And that's what I mean when I say people lie to themselves. They compartmentalize. So when you have mafia going to church and asking for forgiveness, that's not moral.
It
That's
is
bull.
because the
That's,
church says we forgive.
I don't care. You know, I don't have a thing with power. You should know that already. I don't buy into these authority things. But that's what I mean when I talk about lying to oneself.
Are they really lying? Because they're believing the church.
I don't think they really believe that. I
I
don't think
believe there are many who actually just believe that. I think there are. That's why people go out and do things from Saturday to, Monday through Saturday, and then come on Sundays and say, I can be forgiven for anything I've done.
I'm not so sure they believe that.
Really.
I'm not so sure they
Then why
believe
do
that.
people confess?
It makes them feel good.
Let me do something about the dogs.
Okay. You want to pause?
Sorry, they're now in a phase of wanting to go outside. So one of them's outside now, and I'll probably have to get him when they start barking again. There's
That's
four of
okay.
them. Okay. Yeah, I just hear too many stories about people just using Sundays to absolve themselves of sins. And in fact, that's what the church is telling them. And so why is that okay? You know?
When somebody like whatever commits a murder or steals or whatever, they tell themselves stories that those people deserve it.
Or
Why
that
do
they'll
they?
just be forgiven on Sunday.
No, I think they tell themselves these stories because it makes it easier for them to do it. When we other people, we tell ourselves the story, they're not like us because it makes it easier for us to do those things.
I'm sure that's true for some. I'm sure there are other forces at play as well. Loyalty, for example. I will do whatever my boss tells me to do, or my wife, or my kids, or whatever.
Yeah.
So that loyalty for them might account for something, and that might then absolve themselves of other lesser sins.
Yeah. I think the more we move in that direction, the closer we get to something really not right, like a real mental disorder. Because yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I think most of the reason for like addictions and things like that is because we are lying to ourselves and we need to, just fill all these voids in and cover up the things we don't want to see.
See, to me, this is interesting also, because if lying to myself makes me a better person, would that be a bad thing?
How does it make you a better person?
Okay. Despite what I believe, I could be telling myself it is better to greet people with a polite greeting. It is better to pay my bills, even though I really believe that the taxation system is wrong and I really shouldn't have to do
That's
this.
not lying to yourself. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not the kind of lying to. You're misunderstanding what I'm talking about. Um, so why are you paying your taxes if you don't believe in them?
Why? Because I don't want to go to jail, right?
Okay, so you're telling yourself the truth. That's the truth. I'm doing it because I don't want to go to jail. I'm afraid to go to jail. You're not lying to yourself. You're telling yourself the truth. That's the
Okay,
kind of truth
there's
I'm
some
talking
part of
about.
me that's still in misalignment, right? Because I believe that the current taxation system is unfair. I truly believe that, right? Plus, I also believe in self-preservation, i.e., not going to jail, right?
But
So I protect myself here, even though I violate this particular value.
right, but you're missing my point. But what I'm saying is, I'm not talking about what you do to other people. I'm just saying, just don't lie to yourself. And you're not. You're being honest. You're saying, I'm doing something I don't believe in because I'm afraid to go to jail. That's the only honesty I ask for. That's the only honesty I think we owe to ourselves in order to be what we're meant to be. That's all I'm saying, nothing more than that. I'm not saying to do anything differently, just to be honest with ourselves about why we're not doing what we think we should do. Just start, that's the only thing. Just take that little step and be honest about it. It's the people say, I'm not afraid. I'll do this. I don't care what people think of me.
Fuck the system.
That's the kind of dishonesty that gets us into trouble.
So if someone really truly believes that there was a stolen election, and they truly believe with their entire body that they're trying to correct that mistake, are they acting morally?
Yeah.
Even though 5 people were killed?
As long as they didn't kill the 5 people.
But they were in support of those who actually did, right?
Are, just like people are in support of Ukraine. And how
That's a
many
much
people are
more
being,
direct form of support when you're actually storming a building together.
again, these are the kind of conversations that I never think are productive because I mean, there's too many things that come into it.
And yet we must decide as a society whether that is tolerable or not.
No, we must not decide as a society because we're not a block. We're lots of one peoples.
But
We're
many,
individuals.
many one peoples vote together. Many, many one peoples create initiatives and vote on referenda.
But just like you and I don't agree on everything and think about everything exactly the same, a whole society is certainly not.
Right, but there are
So,
cumulative ways that we make group decisions. And those group decisions depend on the sense that we make of these events.
right. But I think that when we got to the point where you said, so if somebody really believes this and they do this, is that moral? And we both looked at each other and we were like, I guess it is. That's a place to stop and think.
I, no,
Once we,
I don't stop there.
okay, but if you're going to say, but here's the thing, if you're going to say, then you got to flip it around. Now take something that you really believe in and think about you being at a protest for something that you really believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody dying in the act of your protest. Does that mean that you are immoral?
Okay, I'll give you an example, right? Suppose Bernie came to town and I was one of, let's say, 5,000 people that went to go see a Bernie protest, right? And let's suppose somebody died in that event. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Then I would say no, because the intent of the group of 5,000 was not to create any kind of violence. Whereas in this event on January 6th, there was an intent of violence.
But what about if some of the people at the Bernie protest, their intent was to create violence? It wasn't your intent, but for some of the people, it was their intent.
Yeah, if I knew that ahead of time, I would not participate, right? And I would also try and reach them and say, not a good idea.
Right. But now, if you're talking about hundreds of people, thousands of people, we can't get agreement on 10 people sometimes.
No, but this group was actually formed in order to form a riot, essentially, to take over a building, to stop a constitutional action from taking place.
I understand what you're saying, and you're not going to get me to defend them because I want.
Which is a
I
problem,
won't.
I think, because always holding a neutral position can also be enabling.
I'm not holding a neutral position. I think what they did was terrible. I mean, the worst is I think the president should be arrested. The former president should be arrested. That's not the point I'm trying to make. How I feel about every single person that was there is going to be different for every single person that was there. Each person has a different set of circumstances, and I'm not going to paint all of them with one brush. And that's what I'm saying.
Hmm. Okay, I can agree that they each have their own circumstances and nuances. But I also would argue that there is a shared common intent there that cannot be swept under the rug.
But like we said, what if you truly believed that the democracy in the country that you loved was being destroyed?
Yes, they probably do believe that. And yet they were still armed and they still had a gallows or whatever it was that they were carrying to go hang Mike Pence. And they still had,
You're saying they,
yes,
but how many people were there? I don't even know.
all I know is
Thousands.
hundreds.
I think it was thousands.
Okay, thousands.
And just from the reports from like Jordan Klepperer from Trevor Noah's show, they weren't all like ready to shoot somebody. Some of them were just stupid people. Like, yeah, let's go to the next, can we go to the next topic?
Gladly. All right, let's see what else I wanted to bring up. Hey, since it's just the two of us, we can stop anytime, Stacy.
I live to give my opinion. So,
Well, I'm giving you the opportunity to give your
I
opinion.
know this is next.
With nobody else interfering right now. Okay. All right. All right. Hey, Stacy, let me ask you this: is COVID over?
It's so interesting that you say this because I got it. No, I'll never mind. Is COVID over?
Yes.
No, it's not over. Is the flu over? Is the common cold over? No. Go to the next topic.
I'm just saying that because a couple nights ago, I went out to a restaurant with a friend, and we were the only two people wearing masks everywhere we went that entire evening. Just curious.
Yeah. For me, so in stores, 80% of the people wear masks. I certainly wear my mask when I'm inside.
80%? Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's high compared to what I see out here.
And well, it depends what town. So it really depends on what town I'm in too. And I see more people of color are wearing their masks where I am. And but outdoors, I see maybe 10% of the people wearing their masks. But also the people that I know that are getting COVID, it's not really, it's like they're getting the flu. All right, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, feel better.
Okay. This is not directly related to the ethics question, but it's indirectly. Is that too dangerous?
No, I love talking about ethics.
Okay. I made a statement yesterday that I thought was going to be controversial. I said ethics is privilege.
Oh, yeah, that is controversial to me.
Yes. And
It's true. It's true. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because I do believe just almost any other accepted social behavior, ethics evolves through the ages. And one could argue it's a simple thing to argue, right? It's a simple thing to defend. Back then, let's say a long time ago, chopping off somebody's hand for theft was considered fine, right? Or killing someone because of a crime of passion was fine. Those, I think, have gone out of the accepted, generally accepted social behavior batch of behaviors. So, in my mind, ethical behavior transforms and evolves over time. And that's what I mean when I say it is privilege. Because when you know better, we will decide to be more ethical. When we don't know, we'll just have that existing standard of what is in practice at the moment. And those of us who are not in the practice of examining social behavior and saying, is this right? Is this wrong? And we just do whatever, we're taught. That's the ethics that we live with. So whatever we have right now that we think is high ethics is going to look primitive 100, 500 years from now. I hope. Okay? Otherwise, we're not growing. So if we believe in growth, then that set of acceptable behaviors is evolving and growing along with the species. That's my main point.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to, because the first statement, I want to just say that it's definitely true that it's harder to be, I forgot, I just lost my train of thought. When you say that, go ahead.
Can you recapture your train of thought while I let a dog in?
Sure. You want to pause the recording?
Not really.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back. That's
So,
the last dog, so they're all inside now.
okay. So what I wanted to say is that it's easier to be ethical when you're not being asked to make a sacrifice. That's clear.
Bingo.
However, I firmly believe that we're given situations, everybody is given a different hurdle to overcome for whatever reason. And I really feel strongly about the need to strive to be ethical.
Okay.
I think that has an impact on us internally.
Okay.
As far as evolving, I think that the more we learn compassion and forgiveness, that's what helps things evolve. Because like right now, when I look at our society, we're a very punishing society. We've evolved, we're not chopping off hands, but we're still weighing what's fair in terms of, well, I had to do this, so you should have to. Everything is not equal. It's just not. And instead of looking at us each as being separate, if we looked at us as being part of a whole, we wouldn't be weighing what's fair. We would be looking at what's needed. And it wouldn't be about making, you wouldn't ask your kids to lift something as heavy as you're lifting. I mean, I don't know. I'm all over the place on this one because ethics is different than judgment, but they go together.
So for you, what is the distinction?
Well, ethics is the judgments that I use on myself.
And what's the other thing?
Well, so the way it connects is the more loving and forgiving and compassionate I can be with myself, the more loving, forgiving, and compassionate I can be with others. That's where they connect.
Okay.
And that's why I'm always trying to push in that direction, because I really believe with all my heart that that's the only way to move into what I think we all want to see happen, which is a more harmonious, loving world. And I believe that with all my heart.
Okay. What always comes up for me in these stages of conversation is an absolute yes, followed by, but there are still psychopaths. And how do we manage around and navigate a society which has 99.9% of quote unquote well intentioned people, but a small number of psychopaths?
So my question is, why are we designing for the psychopaths instead of designing for the 90% of people?
That was not the implication. We have to design for the 99.9, but we also have to design for the fact that these others exist. I could just say design a system that works when everybody's well intentioned. And then actually, that system is very vulnerable to psychopaths, extremely. And I could prove that to you. Okay. But if we design a system which is 99.99% for well intentioned people, plus take into account certain number of psychopaths, then we have a system that might actually account for everyone and work to protect well intentioned people from psychopaths. And if we don't do that, I believe we're being irresponsible.
I don't know. I think I'd need to hear, not even be part of it. I would need to hear more of a conversation because, so I've heard, like Jerry talking about designing from trust. I've heard Barry talking about rules-based systems, and I'm just not so sure that what you're saying is true. I know from my own observations, I see a culture
Mm-hmm.
as having more power to control what those bad people would do than anything else. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with you there.
I am pretty confident that if a system does not account for psychopaths, that system is quite vulnerable to psychopaths.
Well, then then what I would want to do is I would want to look at where the psychopaths get in. And I would want to, so I remember I don't know, I remember being younger and I remember well, you don't want to tell people that because then people will do bad things. And I remember thinking, The bad people already know that. Let the rest of us know. And yes, I think the idea of keeping certain things secret because bad people will do bad things is foolish, because the
I'm
bad
not talking
people.
about keeping things secret.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying this in addition. What I'm saying is, let's discuss how the psychopaths game the system. So
Exactly.
then we can just focus on those points.
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
Right. And then it's obvious things like getting money out of politics is like the first thing. That's so friggin' obvious.
But it's almost impossible now that money is in politics. Because there's a lot of money backing up this whole notion of allow money into politics. And we can't combat that.
A lot of the reason we can't do certain things, in my opinion, is because average citizens are so polarized, which is on purpose. So we're all busy fighting with each other, and they're all up there playing games. They don't want to change anything. So let's stop fighting with each other.
Yeah. Let's make sense. Let's do some co-sense making.
And that's why when I was saying before that I didn't like having certain of those conversations, it's because I'm thinking, like when you were saying, so what if a person really believes this? I'm entertaining that there are people in that group that, and I don't mean in that group, but I'm saying there, I happen to know people that sometimes that I know personally, and sometimes I see them put out a meme and I'm like, oh God, you don't really believe that, do you? Now, I don't always engage anymore. I do. When it's really bad, then I'll engage, because these are people I know personally, and I will sometimes say, that's not true. And I will, we'll talk. But my point is, we have to stop falling into the same trap over and over. And this social media, and there is yeah, I don't even want to talk about. We turn off the recording. I want to share some things that I've seen happen on social media.
Why not share it publicly though?
Why not share it publicly? Without being overly dramatic, I don't
Yeah,
feel
and
safe.
without naming names.
No, because I personally don't feel safe.
Okay, let me pause it. Where is my button? If you make your window small, some of these buttons go. Okay, so let me start. Okay, here we go. All right. All right, that was a little break. Kayla, what's going on with you?
It is the three of you, or the three of us, I should say. Okay, so I'm going to put my camera on because.
Hello.
Hi.
Yep.
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
We are kind of enjoying a new Sunday format, and we had taken a little break from recording because we were going into a different set of events. But now that you're here, we want to say welcome.
Oh, thank you.
We just lost your mic. We lost your sound.
Testing.
I can hear you now.
Now we can hear you.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So, did you guys start at 8 or at 9? I forget.
At 8. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What's going on?
Well, last week I just went over a few things that were the minimum structure that I was trying to put in place for Sundays. And let's see, who was there? Stacy was there, Barry was there, Josh was there. Who else?
I was there for a little bit.
Did you hear the minimum viable structure? Okay, good. So
yeah,
good. So anyway, I shared it with a friend of mine here on the island. Someone who came to GCC about a year or two ago. Her name is Stacia.
Yeah, you told me about her.
Yeah, and so she actually said, "Hey, I like the Sunday discussions." So she said she wanted to join. So I sent her the link. So she'll join one of these Sundays. I'm pretty certain she will.
Yeah, I saw her talking to Joel. She was interested in what he was talking about with
Oh, I
the
didn't see that.
oh
Was that
yeah, she
on?
was interested in the synesthesia.
Oh, okay. Was that on a GCC posting?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go find that. Anyway, good. Oh, that's right. Joel was there. Joel was there. Joel's been there about
Yeah.
the last couple of sessions, I think. Yeah. In
Okay.
fact, I think I spent a couple of sessions more or less doing a back and forth with Joel. I was leaning into some of the ideas that he was trying to teach me. So,
Got it.
so we missed you. You've been spending weekends at various different. What? You were at Disneyland for a while. You were traveling for a while. You've been.
Um, yeah, I'm just reprioritizing, and every Saturday I teach now. I teach in-person dance,
Oh,
and I'm liking it. It's growing. So I was doing the online stuff, my Thankful Tuesdays, but my computer was getting old. So that's why I've been on the phone every time I go on the GCC meetings. Because there was always a lag, people can't hear me. Even in my work meetings, they couldn't hear me. So I have to get that up and running before I teach online again. But because I bought a new car, it's like my finances are being kind of put on hold until I catch up with everything. But I've been doing that on Saturdays and it's turning out really well. And then I still do my lay making, but I haven't really advertised. It's all just been word of mouth. And I want to catch up with everything because I want to get into grants. And I'm loving my new position. So that's another thing I've been doing on weekends is working with United Parents to get grants for the organization. So we're now switching from public grants to private grants because, well, all of the grants end up, going on sabbatical and ending, but the private grants seem to be more viable because they go to the general expenses as opposed to just being a program. So that's been really interesting, but it's just been hard. A lot going on. My son is graduating from 8th grade. So they've got like school recitals and school plays and the school plays. My son's getting another award. So I've just been running around I've been clocking in hundreds of miles, like being there for my kids, and I have to tell myself every night, okay, it's worth it. It's hard, but it's definitely worth it. They're going to be this young only for a certain period of time, but it's really focusing on, my soul.
are you actually writing? Are you writing the grants yourself?
Yeah.
That's great. I didn't know you knew. I didn't know you knew how to do that. That's great. It's
yeah. I know. Well, when I was 20, my very, very first real job, meaning outside of being in the restaurant, and when you're like a teenager, you go and you become a waiter, you go into sales, like a sales store, at least yeah. So this was my very first office job at a nonprofit organization, and it was for abused women and children. So we were a emergency shelter for abused women and children, and long-time shelter. And it was a grassroots nonprofit at the time. Now they're big. And I don't know if you guys know this about nonprofits, but most people interchange in their positions to be able to help out the organization. And the board of directors at the time, very generous older man, had taken me to a couple of grant writing seminars. And so that's how I learned to grant write.
wonderful. That's such a great skill.
Yes, it is. It is. You have to really get some really good information to back up what you're proposing. You have to know your stuff. You have to know the organization. You just kind of have to sell the idea. But when it comes down to it, it's funny because the executive director, my ED, she is a single mom too. She's about the same age, not the most organized woman in the world. But when she actually talks to people who give grants, she's extremely instrumental. And it's funny because she says, yes, we write these grants and we write it to what you want. But when it comes down to it, it's never just a prescriptive thing. It's always going to be tailored to the needs of the people who are requesting these services.
Right.
So it's been a wonderful experience with these people, with my team and the mission. So, pretty heavy stuff.
Plus, you get to go to pretty interesting conferences, conventions, rub elbows with,
Yeah.
really well-known people, right?
Yeah.
Did you tell Stacy?
Oh, Goldie Hawn was in one of my,
Oh,
yeah.
My aunt.
Yeah, it's Goldie Hawn.
oh,
Yeah, she's pretty amazing. She does this program, and I guess it's an online program, but she also visits. It's just not mindlessness, mindfulness, mindfulness. And she's teaching children how to just kind of focus. And so she's giving those tools out to the schools and across the world. Actually, she has, I forget where, her main, I guess, like the country that actually has bought a lot of her programs. It's not here in the United States, it's somewhere else. Yeah, so it's really nice because we've got a lot of professional assignments. We even have lawyers that talk about how mental health is really important, especially nowadays, and that our children need the mental health because, yeah. So we get to see these like awful statistics about suicide rates and, related to COVID-19, related to lots of really tragic
school shootings.
Yeah. So
kids afraid to go to school.
Yeah. And there's still, like, even in our little school, I think I mentioned this, but there were 2 attempted suicides in our school of K to 8th grade. Very small school. All the families know each other, so it was pretty shocking. Thankfully, it didn't happen to where one of the children actually succeeded. But there was also one of the girls in Damien's class got admitted to a mental institution. It was an emergency, situation where the parents just basically called and had her admitted. And that's how she got her she got her help, her medication, and now she sees a therapist. But it just, to see it in action, even in my own community, it kind of makes me happy that I'm actually, serving the community in this capacity. So,
Do the kids understand what you do?
my kids, I think they have a notion. They're happy for me. They know I work a lot, but I don't think they realize, or if they do, they haven't said anything. So yeah.
I'm
Adulting.
I was listening to a really interesting podcast with what's his name? Lex Friedman. He was interviewing Jonathan Haidt, and he was talking about social media and what that's really doing to the mental health of kids. And he was talking about how Mark Zuckerberg kind of lied in his interview earlier with Lex Friedman and misrepresented the data.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad crap out there in the internet, but I'm realizing too, there are a lot of younger people who are stepping up and empowering others and breaking these social stigmas. I mean, every day I listen to Barrett Paul and Drew Afualo. They're very pro women's rights. The one is a gay man, a very handsome gay man. Every time I see him talk, I'm like, oh man, he's probably too young anyway. And then Drew Afualo, she is a Polynesian girl, and she can be pretty mean and pretty raunchy, but I think some people actually need that. She calls men out. Sorry, Sam, but she does. She calls men out in a way that they kind of call us out, but she just does it so brilliantly. She doesn't really lead with education like Barrett Powell does, but oh man, it gets these men. They get pissed off and they don't have anything to say. And it's like the whole point of her content is to empower women and start calling people out for the BS that they've been spewing. And I like that because it's good. So some of it's really mean though.
How do we find her?
TikTok, Drew Afualo. She's very pro, like, you know, just the whole women's movement in general. You know, she shuts down a lot of guys who have these weird entitled viewpoints on women. Like how a woman's supposed to be perfect, you're supposed to be skinny, you're supposed to do everything. And the way she does it is just brilliant. But I like that. I like to tell my kids, you know, hey, we've got these younger people that are actually talking about things that are educational, and they're entertaining about it. And, you know, very close to Damien's age. You know, he's 14 and this woman is in her 20s, but he's more likely to listen to her than he is to listen to me. You know, so it's kind of nice to be able to see younger people be on the platform and just break those stigmas now that have been around since our time. I mean, thank God. So that's like the good part of social media that I've been paying attention to. And I just hope that by doing that, I can empower my kids to pay attention to that, as well as their BS entertainment things too.
So Sam, did you have any more things on your list?
I do, but now I can't reach it because I have a dog on my lap.
Yeah, I'm enjoying watching him. I love when Marley lays on me like that and he like snuggles up.
You know, yesterday you might have noticed I had a different dog, and they'll stay. Yesterday I had Tia on me, and this one is Helios, and literally they'll stay as long as I let them.
Yeah, I love how these big dogs think they're lap dogs.
Yeah, this guy's probably 70 pounds now, you know, and his mom is 75 pounds, Archie, right? Yeah, so they just think of themselves as lap dogs, right, like this.
So you can't see what else was on your list.
Look
at his face.
He's watching you guys. He's looking at you
like,
guys. Okay, I have a sentence written here. I'm trying to reconstruct the context. I wrote, privilege, leisure time, absence of survival focus, psychobabble, pseudoscience are all enablers of our downfall when they allow dismissal and devaluation of science, truth, true inquiry, and ascribe magic, mysticism, enlightenment, intuition, and knowing, quote unquote, to guide lives.
Oh, that's a big tangled up mess.
I love it. I'll just sit back and listen to you and Kayla talk about that.
Well, I would take the first few things you said about privilege, because for me, there's a conversation there about who's directing the money, even in philanthropic circles. that's very separate than the other things where you talk about, magic and mysticism and all that. Those are two completely different things that I would want separated.
Can I explain why they're connected?
Yes.
They're connected because when we have all this privilege and leisure time and absence of survival focus and psychobabble and pseudoscience, those are all ways that this notion of truth gets devalued. This notion of truth gets dismissed. Because people don't need to then really understand how to think. And when the necessity to think is not as important to survival, then all of this other stuff emerges. Magic, mysticism, enlightenment, intuition, downloading from the universe. That's when that stuff really, really comes to the forefront. And
Yeah.
those
I don't.
people
Yeah.
don't like being questioned about the truth.
Yeah.
In fact, those people typically say, well, you don't understand or you don't know the truth because I know the truth and you just can't see it.
Yeah.
That to me, if it cannot be questioned and you make a claim, to me, that's a pretty high bar of hubris.
Yeah. I probably disagree with about 75% of what you said, but let me ask you a question instead. I'll just start at one point. So, what is psychobabble?
Popular psychology that says, well, I understand so and so because this and this and this and that. They just make up shit. Even stuff in psychology today is very, very shallow at times.
And how do you determine that, though?
I'd like to really understand the mechanism. See, if they can explain it well enough that anybody can understand what they're talking about, then I think, okay, that might be well founded. But if they cannot, and there's no other basis or other citations or anybody else that's really resonating with that, then I find it worthy of questioning.
Well, I think everything is worthy of questioning, and we talked about that on a post.
Yes.
So when I'm talking about things that are psychologically related, is that psychobabble?
Not if I can answer you and you explain in ways that I can understand.
Okay.
Psychobabble is, stuff that is, what I most detest is when I ask a question and the answer has four or five or even two brand new terms that are not bothered to be defined and are just assumed to be true or assumed to be understood. That's when I know people are just babbling. They're just introducing terms just to confuse someone. And if I take the time to ask, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? Then often what comes back is, oh, you're just too slow, or you don't understand, or, I've got the truth and you don't. Those are the responses that I'm very, very sensitive to now.
Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, I'm a strong believer that you should try to use the simplest word without losing any meaning.
Right,
Like, I don't think you should sacrifice meaning, but I
right.
think you should try to use the most precise and simplest word.
Yeah. So that's the connection between the the non-cruciality of critical thought and clear, sharp thinking, meaning that people don't really need to think as well, so they don't need to care about the truth as much, and that then sprouts a whole flock of sloppy thinking, and that to me is the demise of civilization if we allow that.
And I agree. And one of the places, because I think that problem has many places that it comes from, many sources.
Yes.
What I'm focused on is really the power dynamics behind that, because people that either have not just financial power, but social power get away with that. And that's something that I think individuals have a responsibility to not feed into.
Yep.
And that's why I keep bringing up the same things.
So I think it's a juicy topic. I didn't know whether it's something you wanted to get into, or Kayla, whether you wanted to get into it. But to me, this is one of the things that really gets me going.
It's juicy, but I really think it needs to be split apart because there's so many things entangled there.
Yeah. So, for example, if I were not responsive to your questions, then I could be guilty of the same psychobabble bullshit that I was talking about. So, yes, each of these terms does need to be defined and the connections made, and then, what it really is the problem. But anyway, this is just the one sentence I wrote down as a possible topic. Now that the dog is gone, I can actually go to some of these other notes as well.
Now, I responded to the word psychobabble because, like, 20 years ago, I remember, telling my ex about, the effect of stress on his health and being told that I was speaking psychobabble. And I didn't have any scientific studies to show him, nor was I going to even bother to look for them.
Mhm.
But I'm like sensitive to that. So, and that's something that people will often do. They'll use their degree to kind of minimize the contribution of somebody that doesn't have that formal education.
Okay. All right.
That's old school. Go ahead.
As a set of possible exercises along this line, I have a number of topics. They're probably each worthy, in my opinion, of at least 10 or 15 minutes, but if you're interested, I could list my list. So the list that I put that could be leaned into on this is quantum everything. Boy, does that piss me off. People say, oh, we're now into quantum enlightenment, or we're into quantum entanglement, or we're into quantum enlightenment. I just hate this shit. That leads to light working and energy healing. Okay? None of this, by the way, I'm saying doesn't exist. I'm just saying I don't understand it, and I haven't found anyone yet who's able to explain it to me. Okay? The Zodiacs, both Western and Eastern. Our favorite, my favorite, religious thought and dogma, accompanied by political rhetoric, accompanied by the lack or disappearance of journalism. Those are all items that I have on my list of ways to explore all of this decline of truth and the growth of sloppy thinking. Actually, arguably, the Zodiacs have been around for a long time. That's not recent. That's all. That's been around for quite a long time.
May I say though that the Zodiacs have as much of an impact politically as, let's say, religion does.
Oh,
That's why it'd be a little bit more dismissive of talking about the Zodiacs, because nobody is saying because you're a Sagittarius you should be a leader. Like, nobody is really saying that. People are saying that, but honestly, in terms of world issues and politics and, running the world.
Yeah, I would say that I could really understand your issue with, the whole quantum thing. But what I hear behind that is this using words to make you sound like you know something more than you really know.
Yes.
That's hearing in that. So
Yes.
It's not so much about that particular word. It's just in general throwing out vocabulary words that sound like you know something.
Yeah, that's what I call sloppy thinking.
As far as the other thing, like when you said energy healing, I guess my first question to you would be, when you think of Tai Chi, which I know is something you practice,
Mhm.
how do you view energy in those terms? Like, what do you think is happening there? And I can't see your face, I just see your beard. So I'm like talking to your chin.
Okay.
Thank you.
So when I talk about Tai Chi, I don't talk about the Chi and how it flows, actually. I talk
Why?
about relaxation, I talk about balance, I talk about movement, I talk about transitions, I talk about smoothness, but I don't
Right.
talk about the energy because I
Why
don't
is that?
understand it.
So again, so I guess my question is, why wouldn't you ask your, what do they call a Tai Chi master?
Shifu,
Why wouldn't you ask him to
because
learn
he
more
also
about?
uses the same words. He uses the words of relaxation, breathing, smoothness,
I
connection,
understand, but what I'm
balance.
saying is
And he doesn't
that's the,
focus so much on the chi aspect.
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, being that he's a master, there's the assumption, at least on my part, that even though he doesn't discuss it with you, he has a greater understanding. So if you really want to understand, why not ask him?
I do. In fact, up until I moved to Washington. So up until then, I was asking, and all of the explanations that I get and I understand are in terms of these words that I just listed, but not so much in the terms of chi. Okay, if I really wanted to understand chi, I would actually ask him much more. But if he responds using these common words, and I understand using these common words, then at least at a first or second grade level, I can understand it. Now, maybe I'm not at college level to understand chi, and I firmly grasp that I could be in that state, okay? But I'm okay going through second and third and fourth and fifth grade until I get there, okay? I don't necessarily need to go directly to college, you when I'm only equipped to go to kindergarten, for example.
But my suggestion would be, why not start there? Why don't ask him and come back and tell us what happened?
I think I will. I'll go back to California. Now that travel to California will be more accepted, I will go back and visit and do that some more. But
Yeah,
that's a direct answer. That's a direct, honest answer to why you ask that.
yeah.
Because I don't need to understand Tai Chi in form, the terms of I'm going to project energy at you and you're going to fall over. I don't need to do that. Okay. I
No, but it would be
understand.
wonderful. I mean, you know what? I wish you could record that call. I would really love to hear him answer those questions.
I'll ask him if I can record that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because what passes for Chi, I've even had people come to the park when I was practicing and they say, "Oh, I've done Tai Chi and I do my Tai Chi." And he says, "Oh, yes, I can see your Chi." I don't even know what he means. Okay. And people tell me that. Okay. You know. So yeah, it could be some of those phenomena like Joel says. Some people have certain cones in their eye and some people don't. I may not have those cones. Okay. Or I may not have the sensors to record chi projection. But whatever. I'm just trying to understand in my own frames of reference. Just trying to be clear about my own
So
life.
it sounds like you've had a personal negative impact on that type of community. Not Tai Chi, for instance, but for like the light bringers that you say.
Not
Um,
necessarily. I'm very curious. I would love nothing more than to be able to download truths from the universe. I want to know how to do that. If somebody says they know how to do that, I want to learn how to do that. And if it takes me 5 or 10 years, fine, let me know. But absent that, I really want to understand what they're meaning, what they really are talking about.
I think they're talking about what most people would talk about, the insight they get in meditation. And my personal feeling is that some people confuse their inner voice with something other. But that's not to say that, that everybody does, whatever. It's way more complicated than that. But yeah.
I I have yet to see it explained on a scientific level. Yeah, I could only explain it from my personal, my personal experiences, and my personal experiences are very limited.
Are you
Like
saying you've
there,
met light workers and, truth downloaders and these kind of people?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have, and they're very the ones that I respect, or the ones that I think are very good. They're very humble about it. They don't explain anything in a scientific terms. They don't break it down, and they don't give an overall answer well, and they don't shut down my questions. That's the good part. I don't know if I can answer your question at all, but from my experience, like I've had Reiki done to me, and there's this one woman who is absolutely fabulous. When I have Reiki from her, I could feel the warmth. She's not touching me. I could feel the warmth of her hands. I could, I actually see colors. Like, it's just weird. Like I'm sad that I'm saying this and it's recorded, but people would probably think I was crazy if I could describe some of the things that she's done that were very positive experiences that I just can't explain. And then there's somebody else who's certified with Reiki who happens to be a friend of mine, and it's just nothing. She could hover her hands on me, and I just like, it's kind of just closing my eyes and meditating myself. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's her service. So of course I pay, but it's like, I wouldn't be able to tell you, you know, the difference between the two, except that one of them was extremely effective and then the other one was not.
It would be curious to find out what the difference is, right?
Yeah.
That's where I really want to lean in. It's like if I hold my hands this way, okay? Like this, right? They're about 6 or 8 inches apart. And somebody inserts their hand between the two and they say, oh, I can feel heat from your hands. I want to understand that. Is it truly just a standard, black body radiation, or is there something else going on? Those are things that we can actually lean into and study. It's where I can question and the answers stop. That's where I get more skeptical. But as long as the answers keep coming and the evidence keep coming, well, I think there'd be nothing better than to be able to do telekinesis or intuiting from the universe or getting in flow with the magnetic field of the planet or being able to talk to animals. I think all that stuff is great if we can actually lean into them and ask more and learn more.
That'd be awesome.
Nothing about any of those things that says it's anti-science, unless they stop answering.
But it's not other people's job to explain who they are.
No, I'm not questioning who they are. I'm questioning the phenomena they claim are true.
Again, the phenomena they claim actually is a part of who they are, and it is not their job or their responsibility to explain that to the world. So, Joel was nice enough to explain parts of himself to us, but that's really not his responsibility or obligation to do that. And yeah, I mean, if we're talking about something a little bit more that people don't know about, because those are the kind of things that people do keep to themselves for obvious reasons. But even taking away special skills and talents, so many of us are, especially women, are learning to stop explaining ourselves. And it does tie into the same kind of thing. Go ahead, Sam.
Go ahead, Kayla.
You raised your hands first.
Oh.
Yeah, but you haven't spoken as much as I have.
So if I'm hearing this correct, Stacy, you agree that people should not explain themselves?
They don't have to. Yeah.
I guess if you don't have to, but I feel like it'd be better to empower people to tell them what you've learned. Like for instance, as a Polynesian dancer, I told my girls, in my class, you will learn the difference between hula and ori tahiti. We need to stop that conversation where everything is hula. It's not. People are getting offended. Like from Tahiti, they're like, why are you teaching hula steps that are Tahitian steps? Why don't you, if you're an ori tahiti, if you're a Tahitian instructor, you should teach it in Tahitian. You should do the Tahitian steps. And, and that's something that I'm starting to tell people over and over. This is why I don't like it when people say, so I'm trying to hire hula dancers. I'm like, what do you mean by that? and I'm starting to have that conversation, because I think, it's like one of those things where ignorance is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And if a responsibility to explain to people, the difference between Tahiti and hula, I will. Like, yeah, it's not their fault, but they don't know. So I feel like it's just like, as somebody who's representative of the culture, it is really kind of my job to explain myself. That way it eliminates any confusion, and it opens more of a conversation just to people, like, to educate people on the differences. And maybe then people will understand that there is such a thing called the Polynesian Triangle. Anyways, that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, can I just answer?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, for example, somebody like Lee Harris, who's an energy healer, or what's his name? John Edwards, who's somebody that, says he speaks to, dead spirits. So Lee Harris will tell you exactly when he started getting these channeled messages. He will explain that. But at some point, if people keep saying, prove it, no, I'm going to tell you, here's the message I'm getting. This is what I got for you. Take it or leave it. That's it. That's what I heard. That this is what's coming to me. I can't explain to you why I got this message. It's like if I had a meditation and I said to you, well, this is what I saw. This is the message I got. And you said, well, how did you get that? I don't know how I got it. This is what came to me. Do you want the message or not? That's what I'm talking about.
There's nothing wrong with that. I completely accept that. The difference I'm seeing, and I'll give you a specific, okay, the reason I invited Joel to come to some of these sessions is because he was making remarks on some posts that were appearing in GCC and elsewhere.
Different, yeah. That's a different conversation. Yeah.
That's why I invite the conversation. Because if he comes in with 1 or 2 words here and 1 or 2 words here, comes in, 1 or 2 words here, it's like, okay, Joel, what are you really trying to say? Okay. Or if I just let it go, it's like, okay, I'm just dismissing him. But if I'm really trying to understand, then it's like, great, does he mean this or does he mean that? And maybe it's good to have a conversation to clarify. That was the invitation. And he accepted the invitation, which I commend him for. And that's why I think we had some very good conversations.
I agree with you. I mean, oftentimes I'll put something on Facebook and somebody will say, is that true? And I'll usually come back, do you think it's true? Let's start there. Do you think it's true? Yes or no? Let's start somewhere, instead of just like, well, what part of it isn't true? Like, let's figure out, what are we even talking about before if we agree or disagree.
Yep. So yeah, I think those 2 sessions in particular were the ones that Stacia watched, and I think that got her more interested in participating in the future. And I do note it's almost top of the hour.
And I'm starving.
Yeah, I'm gonna go probably finish my granola, which has been steeping now for about 2 hours.
2 years.
But it's granola with raisins and almond milk, so it's now this kind of almost semi-firm sludge.
It was nice catching up with everybody. It was nice catching up with you. I haven't had time to talk to you.
Yeah, Kayla, say congratulations to Damien and Maxwell.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know. I've got to get going too. I've got somebody coming over to make a lei.
Full of money?
And then I have to finish my money lei. This little brat's getting $200.
Anyway, hey, there's something in the works that I can't talk about right now, but maybe next week I'll be able to talk about it. So there might be some news I can share.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.